It was literally, okay, we're going to put you on the pill and you're going to take this for 6 months. This is going to regulate your cycle. And then you're going to come off and everything is going to be beautiful and you're going to go on your lovely way. And that is so far from the truth. Like I remember asking her about side effects. I was like, could this possibly affect my future fertility? And I was basically told that that's not possible and that I'm just going to take this for 6 months and it's going to make everything better. And obviously that didn't happen. I did take it for 6 months. We didn't really, my mom wasn't aware of any other alternatives for getting to the root cause. I wasn't aware of anything else. I was like 16 at the time. And so I took the pill for 6 months. I went off of it and I didn't have a period for over a year at that point. But I didn't bring it up to a doctor again because I felt like the only solution that they had for me was going on the pill. And what they told me it was going to do, it didn't do. It didn't help. So I guess I kind of just stopped asking doctors for advice when it came to my cycle at that point.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Haley Yeager. I host the Truth and Fertility podcast. And before we get started with this interview, I want to share some exciting news that if you are watching this, and yes, I said watching, you will see that you can see my face. We are now on YouTube. I've been posting the podcast recordings on YouTube, but just with the regular thumbnail. Now you can see me and the person I'm interviewing. We have full video recording of every podcast episode. So head over to YouTube to Truth and Fertility, subscribe to my channel. You'll see the background behind me is still a work in progress, so it'll be slowly changing over time, but this has been a long time coming and I'm really excited to finally have this option available for you. I'll have the link in the show notes below for the YouTube channel. I hope you enjoy the upcoming interview. Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. I'm Haley Yeager. Today I'm sitting down with Olivia Chasteen. She and I actually go back a little ways because when I first learned how to chart my cycle and really first became an instructor, I learned how to chart and teach in the sympto-thermal method through SymptoPro. And so Olivia Chasteen is really the head of SymptoPro, and she and I met through that. And then we actually have very similar stories, similar backgrounds. I was on the birth control pill as a teenager to quote unquote regulate my period. And Olivia has a very similar background, very similar story with that too. So without further ado, Olivia, why don't you introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about what got you here working for SymptoPro and just really passionate about correct and true women's health.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Well, first, thanks for having me on. I'm happy to chat today. And yeah, as you mentioned, I am the director for SymptoPro. So I oversee kind of the entire SymptoPro program. And we are a sympto-thermal method. So charting your cycle using temperature plus other mucus signs with that. And what got me into that is one, I am Catholic. So when I did my marriage prep through my local diocese, I was required to take a course of instruction in NFP. And SymptoPro has a big presence in my local diocese, and so I just ended up taking a SymptoPro course. I really had no introduction to any other methods and honestly didn't really know much about other methods and how they existed. But now that I'm in a role where I understand that other methods exist and what they are and what they chart, I actually do feel like SymptoPro is a good fit for me. I really like having the biomarkers that I do chart. And so having that Catholic background definitely made me more interested in doing NFP, but also having irregular cycles as a teen and wanting to have a family when I got married. So I had more interest in kind of going the natural route. I didn't feel like conventional medicine really answered my questions or was helpful when it came to my cycle. And so this was definitely a better fit. And that's, I guess, what kind of opened the door for me and allowed me to step in and really feel like this is what I wanted to do and how I wanted to manage my fertility.
Yeah, that's amazing. So can you take us back to when you were a teenager and you were, doing everything that the doctors were telling you to with how to regulate your cycle? Oh, okay, let's just get you on the pill. Can you take us back to that time? How did that all come about? How did that happen? And how long were you on the pill? When did you learn that there was something different?
Yeah, so I definitely, I went through puberty, I guess, a little later than my peers. So most of them had already had their periods. I hadn't. Um, and then when I finally got my period, it was very irregular. It In the beginning, it basically came super often, where it was like every 2 weeks I was bleeding. And, as a teenage girl, that's kind of devastating. You don't know what to do. And my mom obviously didn't know what to do either. So taking me into a regular pediatrician, and there was literally no discussion about any other options. There was no like, let's try to get to the root cause of this. Let's run a basic hormone panel. Let's look to see if there's like a physical cause if you're bleeding. There was nothing. It was literally, okay, we're going to put you on the pill and you're going to take this for 6 months. This is going to regulate your cycle. And then you're going to come off and everything is going to be beautiful and you're going to go on your lovely way. And that is so far from the truth. Like I remember asking her about side effects. I was like, could this possibly affect my future fertility? And I was basically told that that's not possible and that I'm just going to take this for 6 months and it's going to make everything better. And obviously that didn't happen. I did take it for 6 months. We didn't really, again, my mom wasn't aware of any other alternatives for getting to the root cause. I wasn't aware of anything else. I was like 16 at the time. And so I took the pill for 6 months. I went off of it and I didn't have a period for over a year at that point. But I didn't bring it up to a doctor again because I felt like the only solution that they had for me was going on the pill. And what they told me it was going to do, it didn't do. It didn't help. So I guess I kind of just stopped asking doctors for advice when it came to my cycle at that point.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that they had a very temporary time for you to be on it because I was always under the impression, at least because in my story, it was just like, here's the pill, take it until you don't want to take it anymore. And it wasn't like this plan of take it for 6 months and then you should be fine after that. So that's really interesting to me. And then not only that, you said you didn't even have a period for a whole year after. So that's pretty insane.
Right, right.
Yeah. So you said really after that, you didn't seek another doctor's opinion to get this fixed because what you'd been given in the past didn't really work. So I'm assuming you said 6 months and then about a year. So at this point, you're what, like 17, 18 years old. What did you do next? How did you find something? Did you find something different at that time, or did it take a lot longer before you realized you had other options?
I It was definitely a lot longer at that point.
Okay.
So I guess after my cycle finally did return, because eventually it did. It took over a year, but it did return. It was not so frequent the way that it had been coming previously, and at that point, it was now just very infrequent. Like I'm talking like, going 2 months without a period was not irregular for me at that point.
Mm.
And I basically just ignored it. I didn't realize at the time how important it is to cycle regularly. I wasn't thinking about, future fertility and things like that. I just thought, well, it's one less thing for me to worry about, I guess. And so I basically ignored it and didn't do anything about it. And I guess it wasn't until the point of I had finished going through college, I was engaged, getting ready to be married, and going through SymptoPro. And I was like, man, this is actually probably going to make charting a little bit more challenging in that my charts are not going to look like the ones I'm seeing in the course, because my periods are very irregular.
Yeah. Yeah. So when were you engaged? How old were you when that whole thing happened?
Yes, I was 21 when I got engaged. So,
Okay.
yep,
So it was a couple years.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I was 20 when I got engaged. I was almost 21. But yeah, especially for us young, like the young women that are wanting to get engaged. I mean, for everybody, but for the women that are young and wanting to get engaged and start their married life, oftentimes it is that marriage prep class that you're like, oh, okay, I had no idea. Like, where else are you going to learn about that, right? So, yeah, so that makes sense that you didn't learn anything different until then. So you learned SymptoPro for sympto-thermal for marriage prep. how did it come about then where you're like, okay, there's clearly my chart isn't going to look like the examples. Where was that turning point for you where you were like, okay, I need to see a different doctor about this? How did that come about? Where did you find your doctor? Like how did you realize and make the decision to do something about it?
I guess in a lot of ways, I kind of became my own practitioner. um,
Okay.
so I live in a pretty rural area. There's not a lot of like functional medicine doctors, anything like that, especially when you go back a few years at the time when I was going through my sympto-pro class. And so in a lot of ways, I guess I had been very much disenchanted, I guess if you can call it, with the conventional medicine route for other reasons, not just they had given me the pill and it clearly did not work. But I had digestive issues growing up, and I was basically told that they were all in my head and was super not helpful. And so around the time that I was in college, I also changed my diet drastically, like started getting into health and wellness and just finding better ways to support my body than the conventional standard American ways. And so I had already gone down this route. I actually like had my own wellness practice. After I got married, I had started my own wellness practice. I was trained in herbalism. I wanted to be able to offer charting in the SymptoPro method to my clients. And so I had actually reached out to the diocese because I couldn't even remember that it was called SymptoPro. I just knew that I was charting. And I was like, I wonder if the diocese can like get me connected with how I can learn to become an instructor. And so we kind of went from there. And that was shortly after getting married and wanting to be able to expand and offer that to more people. But that was just something that I did kind of on my own. It wasn't necessarily in conjunction with a doctor.
Okay. So I had no idea that you had your own wellness practice. How did that look? Like was it completely virtual or was it people in your area? Like what exactly did that look like and how did you add charting to you said herbalism. So how did you add charting to that?
So it was definitely all virtual. I have never had like a physical location. But for me, I liked working with women. I liked working with moms. I liked working with kids, kind of at the same phase of life that I was at the time. And I guess still am at that, still am right now. I like working with moms and with women. So that ends up including a lot of psycho health related things. So the really wonderful thing about charting is that when you are working on any type of cycle health issue, when you are trying to correct it, whether that be through medication, whether that be through supplements, whether that be through like taking herbs, you can see real-time changes on your charts. So it's easier to be able to see what's working for you and what's not. So I really felt like adding in that piece of the cycle charting, whether they were using it for family planning purposes or not, to be able to use it as kind of that fifth vital sign, to be able to see like what's going on in this underlying way in the body, to be able to use that to help monitor and track for health purposes was really helpful for really any woman in my practice.
Okay. And so you said fifth vital sign, which is like the phrase right now. Dive a little bit deeper into that for the listeners that aren't aware of what that really means. Because when you are working in any sort of medicine or health space, for you it was herbalism and helping moms, you said, and just women with their cycles. As you are giving them different routes forward to pursue more health, you're also looking at their chart to see how it changes their cycle. So can you go into what that really means for those that aren't familiar or aren't aware with the term the fifth vital sign?
Yes. There's really so much that we can tell from a chart, and it's amazing. Like, I mean, there are so many women that after teaching them how to chart, they're blown away by it, and the fact that you can see these differences whether you're in the follicular phase or the luteal phase of your cycle, and how you can like see that on your chart. It makes it just it makes it so much more tangible versus we're just going about in our day-to-day life and it's so easy to ignore. So what using the cycle as the fifth vital sign means is you're seeing your patterns, and you're really getting into a better idea of what those patterns mean. So like for me, in my case, for someone who had irregular cycles, I'm able to see like what that pattern looks like. And it's for irregular cycles, it's most often the beginning part of the phase, that follicular phase. Well, I guess not most often. It always is the follicular phase that is getting prolonged. But is it like a dry follicular phase where there's low overall hormone production? And that's something that we can see is if you're charting and you have very dry cycles, it means that your estrogen's not rising the way that it needs to. And I don't need to go in for a hormone lab to be able to, like a one point in time getting a hormone lab. I can chart and I can see that if the cycles are dry, that's what that means. Or if there's frequent mucus patches, it could be high estrogen or high androgens, like in something like PCOS. But you're using these key features, these signs that you're charting, to be able to correlate them to what is going on underneath in the body that we can't necessarily see. And in a lot of ways, it's better than doing a one-time hormone test because you're seeing the entire cycle and the patterns that happen overall. Because at the end of the day, if you are not cycling like if you are in the reproductive age as a woman and you are not cycling regularly, you're missing out on so many key pieces of hormones in your body for overall health and wellness. And we know that cycling regularly is necessarily for our brains. It's necessarily for our immune systems. It's necessary for our bone health. Like you aren't told these things and you don't know to look out for them, but it's so important to have a healthy regular cycle and to be able to use it, what you see on your chart, to help guide your decision making in terms of what you're going to do to support your health and what you need to do. That is what it means to use your chart as the fifth vital sign.
Yeah, that is really what blew my mind when I learned about all of this years ago. I'm just, because again, I have the same story as you. I had irregular cycles. I was put on the pill. I was only on the pill for 2 months because I had horrible side effects. And I just didn't feel like myself. But then I didn't know of anything different. So I didn't do anything different until I was 18, 19 years old when I learned, oh, there is another option. You can learn how to chart your cycle and kind of go down this rabbit hole. So but that was really cool. I didn't know that you had your own wellness practice. How long did you have that for?
I actually do still see clients on the side, kind of.
Okay.
So from time to
that's
time,
awesome.
yes. I enjoy working with clients, and especially so like I still see clients who just want to learn to chart, and so I still work with them just on learning the sympto-pro method. But I really enjoy working with women who want to come work on the health aspect of things. And they want to be able to chart alongside that because I feel like you just get so much further with those clients. And even to just be able to share that type of body literacy in more than just the family planning purposes, to be able to say, okay, well, if your cycle's doing this, it means this type of thing, is I was blown away by that when I was younger and learning that. And I like to be able to share that with other women.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you said that you kind of became your own practitioner and you started just investigating your cycle. Did you ever get to the bottom of why you were having your irregular cycles?
I feel like it was more like undiagnosed PCOS. I would probably fall into the category of like lean type PCOS, just knowing what my cycle has looked like over, the past quite a few years at this point. But that I started cycling later than my peers. That's a sign of possible PCOS. And then the fact that they didn't straighten out and become more regular. Whereas, normally it's usually only the first year or two that are irregular when you first start having your period. Mine were irregular much longer than that. That's another sign of PCOS. And even from like having babies, like when I nursed my babies, I do not cycle at all while I nurse. And I'm talking like I nursed my babies for 2 years and I do not cycle that entire 2 years. It doesn't matter how little I nurse them or not. That's another sign of PCOS, where it's like all of these things are just kind of adding up. I've never pursued a diagnosis on it because to me, the diagnosis, the name doesn't matter so much because I'm able to use my chart to help improve my biomarkers and move into a better state of health. So certainly, I'm sure that if I wanted to get a diagnosis, I probably could. But I have never, I guess, pursued getting that diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense too if like what you're seeing on your chart is what you're seeing on your chart. So if you're not seeing a regular cycle, okay, what if you already know the things that you need to do in order to improve that, then it does make sense that you can just start doing those things. So do you pursue did you pursue any diet changes, or have you seen improvements with your cycle since learning about charting and learning that maybe you do have PCOS? What are some of the things that you currently do to help manage that and hopefully get to a point where your cycles are more regular?
Yeah, they definitely have looked a lot more regular. I'm still actually nursing right now, so right now I guess you wouldn't call them very regular, but in between babies, they have definitely gotten to a point where they're a lot more regular because I've been able to use the targeted nutrition and targeted supplements to get into a point where not just my cycles are healthier, but I'm healthier as a result. I definitely did do a lot of diet changes. As I mentioned, I had a lot of gut issues as a child. And when I got to the point of college, feeling like conventional medicine didn't have a lot of answers for me there as well, I started pursuing other options and how I could change my diet and I guess kind of work on myself as like as an experiment and see how my health responded. And so I never got to the point where I needed like any type of medication for my cycle, or felt like I needed medication to improve my cycle further. I felt like the diet and lifestyle factor, along with those targeted supplements, really made a difference for me.
Yeah. And I think that that's pretty common with PCOS too. I mean, sometimes it is to the point where you do need that medication or you do need, further help, but diet and lifestyle is, I mean, from what I've learned too, having diagnosed PCOS, that is so important. Like when I was going through my first health journey and seeing a doctor, becoming diagnosed, and then going from there, like I did try really most of the medications that are pretty typical to try when you have PCOS, and nothing worked. I got to the point where I was like on the highest dose of metformin and nothing was changing. I'm like, okay. And this whole time too, my doctor was like, Haley, you gotta change your diet. And I'm in college. I did not, I just pushed that off for so long. So I'm like, I really don't want to do that. But finally I did. And that's what moved the needle. It was diet change that finally I was charting. So I could see the way that the lifestyle changes I was making, I could see how that was affecting my cycle, which was really, really cool. What are some, if you can go into like, I'm just so curious, the details of what exactly does your diet look like? What supplements are you taking just for you? I know this isn't necessarily like a generalized idea, but I think especially listeners who do have PCOS or maybe assume that they have or have some sort of inkling that maybe they're struggling with that. Yeah, I think this would be helpful. So what exactly did you do to change your diet and supplements? You said, what does that look like for you now?
Yes, I mean, it's changed over the years. I kind of go in phases. Also, living in the space of natural health and wellness, you also kind of a little bit inundated in terms of the research and what, this supplement is really big right now. And so, you try different things. Like I said, I like kind of using my cycle and my charts as my own experiment and seeing what works well for me. So definitely go in phases in terms of what I have done in the past. Overall diet changes, that's also kind of gone in phases too. Initially, I was very much into the paleo. I had moved away from probably what was much more of a standard American diet into more of a paleo, which did make a big difference in terms of my digestive health. And there's a there's a lot of research showing that digestive history, especially like a lot of antibiotic use and microbiome imbalance, can be related to PCOS. And I think probably in my case, that was certainly a factor that played into it. Then as I got into my herbalism journey, I did a lot more plant-based. Never at any point went fully vegan by any means, but I was a lot more heavily plant-based. And now I'm at the point where I'm probably prioritizing protein more, but definitely still incorporating a lot of vegetables. I'm a big gardener. I love being out and having my fresh fruits and veggies, especially the ones that I can grow myself. So that's probably the big thing in terms of diet. And I'm really loving the new research in terms of ways that we can support our insulin levels in like the ways that we make our plates and how we eat. So not telling someone, especially someone with PCOS, especially if they're dealing with insulin resistance and might have trouble putting aside all of the carbs and all of the sweets, but to telling them, okay, maybe you should, when you sit down, you have your protein and your fiber and your fat first at the beginning of your meal. So then when you have your carbs or, your dessert at the end of a meal, it's not causing the same blood sugar spike. It's not causing the same level of insulin resistance as it is when you're eating it on an empty stomach. And there's nothing to slow down that digestion, where it's just going to go ahead and cause that blood sugar to rise really drastically and then swing down the opposite end once you've digested that. So making simple shifts like that, I think, are really helpful for women with PCOS. Even things like the myo-inositol and D-chiroinositol, those 40-to-1 blends have a lot of research in them when it comes to PCOS. And those are things that I have incorporated myself in the past. I've also had 2 miscarriages in the past, and that the inositol blend has some research showing that it can reduce the risk of miscarriage. So I found it it was helpful for me, at least mentally, to be able to take that my entire pregnancy following those losses, because I just felt better taking it. Felt like I was doing something. And now my supplement regimen focuses a lot more on minerals, making sure I'm getting a lot of magnesium, adding minerals to my water, supporting my adrenals, trying to de-stress when I can. I think all women and moms probably need some extra help in that area. And then my other areas of supplements currently are, I'm an MTHFR gene carrier, so I focus on making sure I'm getting methylated B vitamins and choline. And that's kind of where I'm at now. Historically, when my cycles were more irregular, I did like more targeted herbal supplements that would support estrogen production during the follicular phase of my cycle. And then after I was at the point of ovulation, then I would switch and take different herbal supplements in the second half of my cycle that would support progesterone production. And I found that switch in taking those herbal supplements in a very targeted fashion to support the particular phase of the cycle that I'm in currently, I found that very helpful. Right now, I'm not taking that, and I don't feel like my cycle is irregular enough that I'm at the point where I need that right now. But definitely in the past, that was very helpful for me.
Yeah, that's extremely helpful. Even just knowing too that there's different supplements that you can take in different times of your cycle to really help, because as you and I know, but the listeners may not know, there is a natural ebb and flow of our hormones that happens throughout our cycle. There is a time of our cycle when estrogen should be dominant. There is a time of our cycle when progesterone should be dominant. And so really helping and supporting those hormones in that way with supplements and diet is extremely helpful. Remind me, how many kids do you have?
I have 3 here, and then we had the 2 losses before the baby was born. So
Okay. So I also have 3, and they're all very young, and I'm very curious, how do you do this as a mother? Like, especially for those listening that are in, whether it's a busy season of motherhood or just a busy season in general, Diet is so, at least for me, that's like the hardest thing for me to do when my brain is just all over the place and I'm dealing with a million things at once. And I find myself in the mornings just like chucking granola bars at my kids and saying fetch. Like this is this is what mornings oftentimes look like in my household. And so I'm curious to know how you prioritize health for you and also your family, given having three kids that you need to feed and yourself that you need to take care of. And how do you prioritize that? How do you make that happen rather than just, by doing what I do and buying the granola bars for breakfast? I mean, that is something I struggle with so much is because when I was single or when I was newly married, diet was something I was so huge on, especially because we wanted to have children very quickly too. And so I was really deep into that health journey of making sure I was eating very properly, helping to support my ovulation. And that's, I really believe, why we were able to conceive as quickly as we did, having PCOS. But now it has definitely ebbed and flowed for me too, as you said, just throughout the different seasons of life, different seasons of motherhood. And right now with three littles, it is so difficult for me to prioritize that. So I'm very curious to know, how do you prioritize it? How do you make it happen for you? I'm sure you do the same for your family. What does that look like?
Well, first, my kids have a pretty significant age gap between them, so
Okay.
I probably am not quite in the same as dealing with three littles very close in age. So, you know, my heart goes out to you. I know that that could be challenging on some days. Yes, my oldest is 9, and
Okay.
then my middle one, she just turned 6, and then the baby will be 2 in a month here. So there's a significant age gap, and the older ones know how to help out. They're required to help out. Um, so that definitely does play into all of this and being able to handle things. Other than that, like I love meal planning. Like I find that that is a big savior for me in making sure that we don't fall back on the convenience foods and just going for the frozen meals and stuff and things like that. Is I sit down once a week. I plan out all the meals that we're going to have that week. When I go grocery shopping, those are the only groceries that I buy. I tend not to bring the junk food into the house. I don't make as strict rules about what everyone eats when they're outside of the house. Like, if we go out to eat, I'm not going to tell them what they can and what they can't have. But in the house, this is like I make almost all of our food at home, and I'm not making you junk food. So
Yeah.
that is uh I guess and again, living in this health and wellness space, I know that I take a harder stance on some of that than some parents do. And certainly everybody has to find what works well for them. Um I feel that since I had health issues growing up, and these are the genes that I'm passing down to my kids, I have to take a stronger stance against some of that. I will tell you though that my daughter is quite young at this point, but eventually when she gets to the point where she's cycling, I am very much actually looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to being able to share this knowledge with her. And she will be much more well educated as a teenager than I was.
Yeah, that's something I'm looking so forward to. Also with my kids, I've got a boy and then a girl and a girl. And actually, kind of funny story about my son. He just turned 6, and he doesn't know what any of this is. Rightfully so. He's too young, but he knows the term NFP because whenever I leave the house to come to work or something, I usually say like, "Hey, mommy's got to go teach NFP. I'll be back in a little bit." And so he knows the term NFP. And there was one time I was teaching a family member, one of my sisters, a how to chart. And so I was leaving the house and I told him, "Hey, I'm going to go teach Auntie how to do NFP." And he looks at me and he's just like, "Auntie doesn't know NFP." He was just appalled that somebody might not know that. And I just was, oh my gosh, it was hilarious. And I'm just like, okay, I'm doing something right. Yeah,
Yes.
we are in a culture in his head that everybody clearly knows what this is. So
Right.
even with our boys, we have to be teaching them, but especially for our girls because they are going to be in the trenches of this. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. And in all honesty, that is how I think it should be. It should be taught by our mothers who have gone through it before, like at the dinner table, and you're learning. I mean, obviously, we don't live in a perfect world, so that's not the way it is for most people. But I hope to be able to do that with my daughters too, to like just yeah, to open the conversation and make it so regular, like
Right.
a
Like
very normal.
this should be like your inheritance. Like you
Yes.
should be able to understand this. This is part of your body. And and you know like what body literacy can do for your self-confidence, especially for a teenage girl. Like what teenage girl today is like, I feel super confident in my body and like understanding it. So there's so much of that, I think especially for that teen category that they can really take out of that and really benefit from and being able to
Mhm.
understand that their body is good and that if something's not working right, it doesn't mean that they're broken. It doesn't mean that, they just need a medication to cover it up, that we can get to the root cause and we can help like protect what's supposed to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's transition a little bit into SymptoPro because I can't be talking to the director of SymptoPro and not ask all the questions about SymptoPro. So we've been this whole time we've been talking about fertility charting, and there's plenty of methods to choose from. But you yourself learned SymptoPro in marriage prep, and now you're the director of the whole company. So tell our listeners who are not familiar at all with the symptothermal method or SymptoPro, what exactly it is, how it differs from other methods, maybe why you prefer it. I'd love to know that too. So tell us a little bit about all that.
Yeah, so sympto-pro was developed. It was actually developed in the 70s. It became like an official method, I think in the early 80s it was, when they started offering classes. And it was offered under Northwest Family Services, which is a company out of Portland, Oregon. And so sympto-pro is not like its own company. We're a program within Northwest Family Services, but we've been around for a while. Obviously, it was developed, 40 plus years ago. It was developed based on the research of Dr. Joseph Retzer out of Austria. They worked directly with Dr. Joseph Retzer when they put the method together. So it was, not just borrowing his work, it was working with him and making his work into this formal method to be able to offer these classes. But SymptoPro, so what sympto-thermal methods are, is that women will chart their basal body temperature, which is your lowest body temperature. It's usually what you would take right away in the morning before you get up and are moving around, because then your body temperature starts to rise. So you take your basal body temperature, and then you can chart mucus signs. So for SymptoPro, we put a heavy preference on charting your cervical fluid, so your cervical mucus, cervical sensations, which is just feelings that you can have like throughout the day, not just when you're wiping. And we also do teach how to chart the position and feeling of the cervix, although we don't put as heavy of a focus on charting the cervix. And now I have never learned couple to couple league, which is another symptothermal method, so I can't speak for certain on this. But it is my understanding that couple to couple league puts like a higher priority on the cervix position and the cervix feeling, and less on like sensations. Whereas SymptoPro, we put more preference on the sensation and the cervical fluid and less on the cervix. We both of us still teach all three of those, but it's just in terms of, I guess, where we put our priority. And so that's kind of the difference between us and couple to couple league, which is one of the other larger symptothermal methods.
Okay. And there are also methods where, so SymptoPro is more of a cross-check method. You're checking multiple things and cross-checking them to confirm. Whereas other methods, like I'm currently teaching Creighton, that's just a mucus-only method. So just candidly, why why do you teach SymptoPro? Like what is it about SymptoPro that you really love, maybe even against other methods? And not to say one method is better than another. I never even say I'm double trained, and I don't say one method is better than another. I just say whichever one you're going to use is the
Right.
one
Right.
that's best. But what about SymptoPro do you love?
And I like that you brought that up because that's something that I do share with clients too, is that if they've gone through the course and they're not enjoying it, or it's really hard for them to commit to like taking their temperature and they're just really struggling with it, go to another method. I would rather you find a method that works for you than sit there and just give it up altogether. So for me, I really like SymptoPro because you you have the cross check of the temperature and being able to see that on your chart. It's an objective measurement because I can't like think my way around what the thermometer reads. I can think my way around sometimes. How do I want to interpret this mucus sign? Um, I don't necessarily feel that way so much now, but for a beginner,
For sure.
trying to figure out,
Yeah.
okay, which category does this mucus sign go in? Can be a bit of a learning curve, especially in those initial phases when you're just learning the different categories and what to chart your different signs as. But the temperature check, it's so objective. Like or I guess it's not objective. No, it is objective. It's not
Yeah.
subjective.
Yeah.
Yes, there we go. And that you can like you chart what you see. Like that's what you plot your temperature as, and it's inexpensive, obviously, to go buy a thermometer. So it's just a low barrier in terms of getting into the method and understanding it. And then for those new couples who are just charting this, it's just to be able to see your temperature shift for the first time. It's like it just gives you that confidence. Like, wow, I didn't know this was actually happening. Like this is the body literacy kind of seeping in and being able to understand that at that point. But then it just gives you the confidence. Like I think that I can actually do this. And for me, especially having irregular cycles, like when I first started this, having that temperature rise was really helpful. Because I wasn't, waiting for more patches of mucus to come or anything like that. Like I really felt like I could close the point of, okay, I have ovulated. Now I am into the follicular phase of my cycle, and I could believe that, and not talk my way out of it because my temperature confirmed it for me.
Yes. That is so with irregular cycles, that is something I hear often is that, oh, you don't need to do your temperature because if you have irregular cycles, you're not really going to have a temperature rise very often anyways. And I totally disagree with that because for me having PCOS, I still, as much as it is managed now, I do still have fairly irregular cycles. That's something I'm still working on. And I I take my temperature still because when I see that temperature rise, it is such a confirmation of, okay, I know where I'm at in my cycle now. I know in about 2 weeks, I'm going to have my next period and it's going to be a true period. It's not going to be some weird withdrawal bleed. It's going to be an actual period following ovulation. And also, hang on, let me take a step back to just for our listeners who are like, why the heck does your temperature rise? Quick, actually, let me ask you, let you explain that. Why does your temperature rise in your cycle? Why can you take your temperature?
Yeah.
Really to back up for a
Yes.
second.
And that is thanks to progesterone. So in the first part of your cycle, estrogen is the dominant hormone, and the estrogen is being released by the follicles on your ovary that have the eggs inside of them. And after the egg is released in ovulation, the follicle, the empty follicle, because now the egg has come out of it, turns into the corpus luteum, and the corpus luteum secretes progesterone. And so in the second half of the cycle, in the follicular phase of the cycle, that is when the progesterone rises, and it should be the dominant hormone. Progesterone causes the body temperature to rise. And if you think of the word progesterone, it's progestation. It is there to help your body, prepare your body for potential pregnancy. Now, obviously, if you're not getting pregnant, if conception hasn't happened, there's not going to be pregnancy, That doesn't mean that progesterone is not rising as a result of ovulation and to prepare for that. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're pregnant, but it means that your body is preparing for a pregnancy and your temperature is rising a little bit. It's making you a little bit more cozy if you would happen to get pregnant.
Yeah, I usually say your body pretends that you're pregnant until it realizes that it's not. Just to make sure that your body is still and new life is still being supported, just in case it is there, until your body realizes, oh, okay, it's not. Then everything drops, then you start your period.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's super helpful. So yes, progesterone rises. Progesterone is dominant in that post-ovulation phase. So therefore it's raising your body temperature. Yeah, so I just, even with irregular cycles, I love taking my temperature, because when I see that temperature rise, it's almost like a dopamine hit, honestly, of just like, okay, yes, we're there. We're getting things going. It's moving along. And usually you have about a 2-week post-ovulation phase. So therefore I know, okay, in 2 weeks I can be prepared for my period coming, which is extremely helpful. I want to ask you too, I can't not ask you about femtech and like the Oura Ring, for example. That's a question I get all the time. What are your thoughts? Because it is taking your basal body temperature. What are your thoughts on using the Oura Ring as rather than just like a $5 thermometer from Amazon?
So officially, the SymptoPro method, what we tell clients is that the research that SymptoPro was developed on is based on using these, it was actually oral, rectal, or vaginal thermometers. We don't have enough information to be able to say that the effectiveness of these different, like we have effectiveness rates for various rules. So like you can pick your rule, pick your effectiveness rating. But we don't have enough information to be able to say that this femtech specifically corresponds to that effectiveness rating, because studies have not been done on the different thermometers in conjunction with a sympto-thermal method. So, you kind of have to pick your poison, I guess. We don't tell women that they can't use it, and we will help you optimize your usage if you do plan to use it. We have people on our team who love temp drop, and that is what makes that's what allows them to continue to chart SymptoPro versus switching to another method. Because for some women, especially in some seasons of life, it's very hard to get up and take your temperature, hard to get up at the same time. Like if you're working shift work, if you're up with a baby, just up with kids, not even just a baby, but like you're up at night, it can be hard. And for some women, that means that they end up switching to a different method. So I get that the wearables have this draw and a convenience factor to them. What we like to tell clients is, one, if you're going to go with one, we would prefer that you would go with temp drop, because it's an armband. It's closer to the core. That's not going to have the same temperature fluctuations as something on your wrist or your finger might have. So we just feel like the reliability on that is a little bit better. I know there was a study also that just recently came out, that temp drop, they were co-authored on the study. So, possibly some bias there, but a study just came out on temp drop saying that comparing their results to Clearblue monitor was pretty consistent. So that is very good sign. Again, not studied directly in terms of a sympto-thermal method, so we still can't say for sure that the effectiveness rating is the exact same. But especially for those women who just really want to use it, even if they want to use their Oura Ring, I'm not going to tell you no. I'm going to tell you that ultimately, if a method failure happens, we can't say for sure if it's a method failure, because if you're relying off of your temperature and we don't know that your temperature data is as accurate as it should be, it's hard to say for sure. So you have to be able to decide what risk you're willing to take. Another good thing that you can do is if you decide to use a wearable for a cycle or two, chart 2 temperatures. Chart in a regular digital thermometer and chart with your wearable, and are the temperature patterns consistent? If they are, it's probably going to be a good option for you. But if your wearable and your oral thermometer are way off of each other, it probably isn't the best choice.
That's super helpful. Yeah, to actually use the thermometer in conjunction with whatever femtech you're using just to compare the two. To even, and that could even help just increase your confidence because hopefully in a perfect world it is lining up well, but sometimes maybe it isn't. And maybe it is because you're getting up in the middle of the night all the time for whatever reasons those are. So yeah, that's extremely helpful. I've also said too, and maybe correct me on this. I'm curious to know what your opinion on this is because when I've been asked this question, what I typically say, especially the Oura Ring, that's like the one that I get most common questions about. From my understanding is that the Oura Ring doesn't even give you exact temperature. It just kind of creates a baseline and then shows your temperature pattern as like a -1 or -2 and then a +1 and +2 from that, at least in the example that I was given. So maybe there is an Oura Ring out there now that does exact temperature, but if that is the case where it's not giving you the exact temperature, then no, you can't actually use it for the method because for the sympto-thermal rule, for the SymptoPro method, you need the exact temperature in order to do that proper cross check. But I will say it is helpful to at least see that temperature rise, even if you're not getting the temperature exact temperature readings in that. It more so less for family planning, I think, because for family planning, you need to be confident in like exactly what day you are fertile and what day you're infertile. So the more of just for those that want a general understanding of their fertility and a general idea of what things look like, that can be helpful just to be able to see that curve and see that temperature rise to increase confidence. But yeah, if you're taking that step further to use this for family planning, for sure, you need to know exactly what day and what time of day you are fertile and infertile. I just buy a $5 thermometer on Amazon and those work great.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Basal body thermometer specifically, for sure. That's super helpful. That was something I'm getting so many questions about that. And so I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. There's
Awesome.
definitely definitely had an increase in clients asking specifically about Oura Ring. And I'm always like, if you want to do a wearable, maybe look into a different wearable.
Okay.
I would definitely prefer Temp Drop over that because
Yeah.
Temp Drop is like it's designed for use for family planning purposes and for
Mm,
cycle tracking. It's whereas Oura Ring, it was developed more for like sleep tracking initially, I believe. And then how it has kind of expanded and people are saying that they can use it for this, but I feel like Temp Drop is kind of the one that it's more for cycle purposes. So
yeah, for sure. And Temp Drop does give exact temperature readings too. Am I correct
yeah,
in
and
saying that? Okay.
they used to like have an algorithm update that would like it could even go back 2 days and change your temperature based on what your temperature was this morning. But they
Mm.
changed that so that that algorithm, whatever that algorithm adaptation that they had, like doesn't go back and change past temperatures anymore. So I feel like because of that too, it helps them be more reliable and is that they're not changing your temperatures.
Yeah, that was something that I've heard too, that it had kind of a weird algorithm to it. So I'm glad to hear that that's more more stable, it sounds. So that's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Olivia, as we're hitting our time, is there anything else that you want our listeners to know, either about your story or about PCOS or about symptothermal, anything that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I think that I guess if you have a daughter who is in the phase of having irregular cycles, um, don't accept the pill as your band-aid solution. There are so many other options out there, whether you want to go like the route of finding a diagnosis and figuring out what the exact underlying cause is, or even if you want to kind of go a more I guess, neutral route like I did and not necessarily pursue the diagnosis, but still working with someone to try to find out what's going on cycle wise and charting the cycle just because, man, there's so many side effects to that pill. And like knowing what I know now, I wish that I hadn't been given that band-aid solution because not only did it not fix, it actually added further insult to injury, increased my risk of getting breast cancer, like increased my risk of having depression, all of these things. And your babies don't need that. Like we have different solutions out there. You just got to find someone who can work with you and I guess that's one thing that I'm really passionate about. And like I said, I'm hoping that one day I can pass all this on to my daughter, and we can protect her cycle in a way that mine wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And if somebody wants to learn SymptoPro, how can they do that?
Yeah, they just go to symptopro.org and you can register for any of our classes there. We have classes in both English and Spanish. We have just introduction to NFP classes as well as the full client course where you're working one-on-one with an instructor. It is on demand and online. You can also find, like if you don't want a self-paced course and you want to learn like live with an instructor, either in person or over Zoom or something like that, you can find any of our affiliate instructors on our directory on our website. And a lot of them do see clients in a live format instead of the self-paced option.
Okay. Awesome. Olivia, it was so good chatting with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it was fun. Again, thank you for having me.